Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Sparklist, the total self-service email marketing solution for small to medium-sized businesses at sparklist.com. Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations with Pat Callahan, a weekly podcast focusing on e-commerce topics featuring interviews with prominent people in the e-commerce space. And now let's move right on over to Pat to see who he has queued up for this week's interview.
Welcome to the E-Commerce Conversation with Pat Callahan. Today I'm joined by Matthew MacDonald, author of Creating Websites, The Missing Manual, the book that should have been in the box. Welcome, Matthew.
Oh, hi. Nice to be here.
Let's talk about your book, which I consider to be a great tool for those just starting out in the world of websites. How would you personally describe your book?
When we were first thinking of it, we thought of it as advice on building a website, but a bit more modern than the current books on the market. There were a lot of books that were just talking about HTML or JavaScript or this and that pieces and browsers, whereas we wanted to talk about, if you were thinking about just getting a web presence today, you don't want to really deal with all the little specifications. You just want to understand the whole picture, how it all fits together, what would be your real starting point.
Yeah, and I think your book does a great job of accomplishing that. I do have a question that I've always wondered since I picked up your book a couple of years ago. How did you first become involved with the Internet?
Yeah, I don't really have any exciting stories on that front. I grew up when the Internet was just entering into public consciousness, and it started off as just a bunch of static pages, and I remember someone saying, "Hey, have you heard about that thing called the Internet?" And
I think we all have a moment like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
At the time, it was really, it seemed so promising. You'd go on and you'd find all this information, but you'd sort of end up following these links around. There would just be links to more links, and it sort of started to seem like a bit of a waste of time. And of course, then the real game-changing things happened. I remember a friend saying, I'm really interested in this company that's selling books, but I think their share price is a little bit expensive, but I really would like to invest in them. And of course, that was Amazon. I'm sure that friend would wish that he had followed his instinct and invested in that.
For those who are just starting out, as far as designing a site, where would you recommend they start?
Well, I guess designing the site before you sit down with your, however you want to do it, your design tool, your notepad, before you start even thinking about HTML, probably you want to start thinking about, your customer and how and what they want to do on your website and how they want to use it, and sort of just start planning out how it's going to flow from page to page. So even if you really have no understanding of the web specifics, that put that on hold for a second and just think about what you want your website to do and how it should be organized and how, if you were your customer, you'd like to use it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Let me ask you this. What is the process from point A, I have this idea, to point B, I have a functional website? Can you go into that a little bit? As far as, I think for people who are just getting started, they probably don't even know that you need a hosting company. They don't know anything about shopping carts, that kind of thing.
Right, so it can be a little bit overwhelming at first, I guess.
Yeah.
You can start playing around with it on your own computer, which is one of the great things that people don't always realize right away. You can build, a website that no one else can see, but you can start getting a feel for how those things work. If you're using a tool like FrontPage or Dreamweaver, you can start designing your websites even before you've thought about the hosting company. And the hosting company seems really more intimidating than it really is, because once you've sort of done your search, you'll find that many of the hosting companies are pretty similar. The amounts of money that are involved are not much. Dollars a month for a small website can easily have you hosted. And, the process for transferring your website to that web hosting company and all those little details, once you figure them out, they're actually pretty straightforward.
I have a question that I've often wondered as I read your book. Do you have a preference for either FrontPage or Dreamweaver, as far as what you personally use?
Sure. I'm afraid of saying either one and offending half of the world. Of course, FrontPage has the reputation for being, the easier one to use, but for sometimes doing things you don't want it to do. So traditionally, serious web developers have preferred Dreamweaver because they can control everything that's going on, whereas people who don't work quite at that level have preferred FrontPage because it's easier and it's more productive. Now, both of the programs over the years have made dramatic strides to getting more and more similar. So Dreamweaver has become a lot easier to use, and FrontPage has become a lot better about not changing, your HTML and inserting things you don't really want there. And really, I would say at this point, it's I don't even have a strong opinion. I mean, you could literally use either one, do all the same things, and it's really just a matter of what one's comfortable, or maybe what one's more affordable, what one you happen to have, in your company on hand. They're both great tools. And even, in the book we talk about something called NView, which is just a really small-scale, open-source, but completely free web design tool.
Yeah, I actually use that.
And you can share your experience with it, but you probably found that, hey, it doesn't do a lot, but, for free, you can do everything really that you need to do.
And you can. I had it up the same day, so worked out well for me. I'm personally a Dreamweaver man.
Sure.
And I always wondered, Matthew, why a manual never came in the box when I bought my Dreamweaver. There is absolutely no manual whatsoever, which led me to buy Dreamweaver, The Missing Manual, the book that should have been in the box.
Right, and that's actually, I think, one of their top titles, and that's exactly why you have that combination of an incredibly sophisticated program with not much help to get you through it.
Yeah. I'm guessing that you've seen a lot of websites in your time. Can you tell me about characteristics that make up the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Sure, and I would say that you probably don't really need a professional to tell you this, because these days everyone's online, whether you're doing your banking, purchasing, just reading news. So even if you don't feel as comfortable, you probably in the back of your head have this sense that tells you when something's ugly or wrong or just not pleasant to use. And I think that most people will agree that, simple is better. You use something like Google or eBay or Amazon, and they add glitzy features from time to time, but the emphasis is on whatever you need to do, you can do it easily. There's nothing distracting you. There's not ads popping up when you don't expect them. Whereas if you go over to, I guess, personal web pages and blogs have sort of the reputation for being the worst. Having things like flashing animations and really hard to read, dizzying backgrounds that make you think you're in some sort of psychedelic 60s revival. So, keep it simple. The same rule that applies to, print design. It's a completely different medium, but the same sort of philosophy of it's serving a purpose. The customers have to, or the visitors have to be able to come and read and do whatever they're doing. And if you're distracting them with music and sound effects and colors and things like that, it's just overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think your example of Amazon and eBay, just looking at their their platforms, how simple those are is a great example.
Yeah, and for example, Google is one that looks simple and really is simple, and then Amazon is one that looks simple, but there's a lot of other fancy features here and there if you go digging around, and there's, doing it yourself would not be easy, but both of them feel similarly simple to use, which I guess is the important part.
Right. Overall, I think a big question people generally have, whether it's something they do as a hobby or they've decided to go for a full-fledged e-commerce store, is can I create a website myself? How would you answer that?
Oh, definitely, and it's well, if it's a question of you have some specific slick design in mind and you're not sure if you have the graphical sense, maybe you want to have someone help you with art or work or something like that, or you can have that assistance, but you definitely don't need it. And as far as if you're worrying about how do I do the taking credit card payments and having a shopping cart, do I need a programmer?
Mm-hmm.
Just a few years ago, the answer would be, yes, you sort of do, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and you're going to need a huge web hosting company, and it's going to be incredibly complicated. Whereas today, there's all these third-party services that we talk about in the book, things like PayPal, where you can, almost just sign up, and they'll generate blocks of code that you can put into your page, and basically you'll hand the customer over to PayPal to do the payment, and PayPal will then pay you. And so you could set up a complete e-commerce company, not the next Amazon.com or anything, but still you can sell things over the web in an automated fashion and take credit cards and all those tricky details and be secure without needing any special expertise or programming knowledge.
If I wanted to start an e-commerce site today, how long do you think that process would take? Something well-designed, well-thought-out, well-developed.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on how ambitious you are.
Yeah.
If you're making handmade jewelry and you just have, you've taken pictures of a few pieces of jewelry and you're just going to put them in a basic product catalog, you could sort of prototype that and whip that up in a couple of days, easily. Building a really great experience for the customer and selling a large number of products and making it work really in the way you want can take a lot of time. It's a labor of love. If you asked how long would it take to make a print catalog, you could whip up Microsoft Word, and Microsoft Word is easy to use, and you could assemble it pretty quickly, or you could labor over all the details for a long, long time. I guess that's not really an answer, but it isn't difficult. Yeah, it doesn't need to be difficult.
Well, that's all the time we have today for this week's e-commerce conversations with Pat Callahan. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune in next week for part 2 of the interview with Matthew MacDonald as he discusses points on starting an e-biz and testing websites on various browsers for both Windows and Mac users.